Well, we have prepared for you this evening, I think, a truly marvelous experience with our keynote speaker. Bhairavi Jani, Miami class of 1999, is, in a word, simply amazing. Consider Bhairavi's life, if you will, the short 30-some years on this planet. She arrived in Oxford, Ohio from India at the age of 16 to attend Miami University and graduated 3 years later. Following graduation, she took a position with KPMG, I do that wrong every time, marketing consulting in Washington, D.C. In 2001, she returned to India and started her own company, a fourth-party logistics firm, the first of its kind in India. She then moved into the position of director of the SCA Group of Companies, a company founded by her great-grandfather. Taking a leave from this work recently, Bhairavi spent time as the executive director of India at 75, an initiative with the agenda of creating an inclusive, sustainable, and developed nation of India by the year of 2022, the occasion of India's 75th anniversary of independence. And she's just getting started. She remains close to her alma mater, supporting the Global Rhythms program, a multicultural music celebration founded at Miami and staged each year during Family Weekend. Additionally, she is active in efforts to promote Miami to Indian students and in aiding American students at Miami to have a study abroad experience in India. Study abroad has become one of the key components of Miami's educational experience, and certainly no one has lived the notion of existing in a multicultural world and expanding the globe and our connections with people around the world than Bhairavi. She mentioned this evening that since being on campus at Miami in October, she has spent a total, cumulatively, of 10 days at home in India. She is, as I said at the beginning, a truly amazing person, and I know you're going to enjoy hearing from her tonight. Please join me in welcoming Bhairavi Jani.
Good evening. It's just so wonderful to be here this evening with all of you for two reasons. One, I know there are many years between the time you spent at Oxford and I did, but the great thing about Oxford and Miami is that very few things do change. And the second most beautiful reason of being here this evening is to really share with you the reason for my ability to even comprehend the world and being able to go back and change so many lives in my own country is that I had a stupendous, beautiful education from Miami University. In Mumbai, on a busy road, we have a small building. It houses the Blind School for India. Inside, as you enter at the reception, there's a lovely caption by Helen Keller. And it says this, that the most beautiful and amazing thing about the world, and everything in the world is, that it cannot be seen or touched, but it can only be felt in your heart. And somehow, those words stayed with me as I left for Miami in the year 1996. What I would like to do today is to share with you experiences that have shaped my time at Miami and therefore how I look at the world. Over the last 10 to 12 years, I've seen many Miami students come and spend a lot of time in India. And as I see them grow in the last 10 years into human beings that have embraced a whole new world, possibilities that they have opened for themselves and their communities and their colleagues, I'm more than ever sure that what I did at the age of 16, which is to go and explore a whole new culture, understand the world from a different perspective, and know fully that it doesn't matter how many thousands of miles it is between nations and people. In the end, we all want the same thing. We all want to leave this world a better place for generations to come. I was born in the year 1979. And 1979 seems to be a very interesting year, because that's the year United States and China officially developed diplomatic relations. That is also the year when Ayatollah Khomeini comes to power in Iran. That is also the year Margaret Thatcher becomes the first woman prime minister of United Kingdom. It is also the year when Canada elects its youngest prime minister. 1979 also sees resignation of the Iraqi president and therefore accession of the then Vice President Saddam Hussein. It also sees the year of Sovietization of Afghanistan, and it sees McDonald's launch its Happy Meals. But it's also the year where Star Trek Motion Pictures is premiered at Smithsonian. And closer home at Miami, Dr. Shriver starts his now very famous lectures of history of Miami, which I'm sure all of us at some point in time in our life had an opportunity to experience. What I'm really telling you is that what happened in the year I was born is very much relevant today. I'm sure it's not amiss to you that in one of the biggest and closely fought presidential elections in the history of this country, one of the point of contention is the United States' trade relationship with China. It is also not amiss to you that you have spent as a country last 20 years focused on 2 wars consecutively in Iraq, and they only happened because a man called Saddam Hussein did come to power in the year 1979. I'm sure it is not amiss to you that it is the Sovietization of Afghanistan that led to a whole lot of issues that the world is dealing today in terms of terrorism. It is also not amiss to you that Happy Meals is the biggest and most global franchise product offering by any multinational corporation in the world. So there is a way for history and time to shape global order. And it is so important that we give our children and students an opportunity to see the world for what it is, not what we believe it should be, not what we think it should be, not what is our opinion of it, but an opportunity to see for what it really is and form their own judgment, their own opinion, their own ideas, and their own ability to deal with what we call today a highly interconnected and interdependent global society. I'm going to tell you how I came to Miami. You see, I was 16 and a very protected only child at that point in time. My parents would not even allow me to enter the kitchen of my house in India. They thought I'd get burnt. And then suddenly one day I come back and I say, I want to go study abroad to the United States. So can you imagine the shock on their faces? You don't go to the kitchen of the house and you want to go all the way to the United States. But I have to give them the fact that they actually went along with all my fantasies and whims. And we ended up applying to a couple of schools, Miami being one of them. And I still remember it was Easter weekend, and my father and I were driving up. And Easter weekend, everyone's gone home. So we arrive on Friday evening, and it's late spring. Pretty much it's dry, the snow has gone over, and suddenly you're driving from Cincinnati Airport, and everything looks barren. And I looked at my dad, and I said, Dad, we come from a city of 16 million people. Are you sure you want me to go here? He said, well, we'll see, let's see, because by then he's also not too sure. And suddenly there is an oasis of these lovely brown brick, red brick buildings that come up from nowhere. And it's a beautiful sight. It's a beautiful sight for a 16-year-old who is grown up in a very big city, in a family that's highly connected with the rest of the world, being in the business of shipping and logistics and air cargo. But it really was a sight for me to behold, because I couldn't have seen a more beautiful sight in my life than when I saw those first few buildings of Miami University. The weekend went on, and as we walked around the campus, it started raining. And we were actually meeting a few faculty on Monday morning campus tour. And suddenly a faculty from Decision Sciences, I think it was Dr. Mike Broida, looks at us and says, "Oh, you're gonna get wet, here, take the umbrella." My dad and I weren't really sure why was somebody out of no turn offering us an umbrella. We're not even from this country. How does this man even know he's gonna get his umbrella back? But okay, we'll just take it. To a father who was gonna let go of his 16-year-old daughter in a foreign country, there couldn't have been a better and a more beautiful and more peaceful and more protected environment than Miami University. I still remember his words. He said, "Well, the thing is that you can't get out of here if I don't give you a car, and I'm not gonna give you a car." The impact of that only became more real as years and months went over at Miami. The first few days at Miami were very interesting. And I was part of the international student program, and we were always asked to come a week before than the rest of the freshmen, so that, you know, we could get adjusted, get our little photographs taken, get our social security numbers, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the evenings, there was this big commotion in the hallway of the dorm. And, you know, we all got out and said, "What's happening?" We sort of huddled in the room of the RA, and she was on the phone, and everybody was saying, "Well, Sebastian's arrived. He's at Miami. Sebastian is at Miami." And I was like, "Who is this Sebastian? And, you know, why is he at Miami?" And so somebody said, "Well, he's a French exchange student." So I was like, "So Sebastian is at Miami? And I mean, is he some royalty? I mean, what are we talking about?" Because everybody just kept saying, "Sebastian is at Miami." And then somebody said, "Oh, he's looking for Clausen Hall." It's like, Sebastian is at Miami and he's looking for Clausen Hall, so let's go get him. Then somebody said, "Well, Sebastian is at Miami, Florida." Because you see, this wonderful French exchange student had landed up in Miami, Florida, and was looking for Clausen Hall. So we all got together and we made sure that he got on a flight to Cincinnati, and somebody made sure that they went and picked him up so Sebastian wouldn't let him in another place. But it was just an incredible experience to live in a dorm where there were 100+ students from 80 different countries. I do not remember in my 3 years at Miami if I've ever had the same number of 8 people sitting on the table having dinner. Do you know what that feels like? In a world of no Google, in a world of no Hotmail, it was as if you had a whole world at your doorstep, literally. I learned a lot about new countries, cultures, what they thought of our cultures, what they thought of the world that they hadn't seen. It was just a great way to open yourself up, make yourself willing to what Helen Keller describes as an experience of the heart. Because unless you're willing, even the experience of the heart does not yield anything. So Miami created that environment for all of us international students to have our hearts and minds open up to new possibilities and new vistas. The most amazing part of this was that it was done in a beautifully small, lovely American town. And I say this in all honesty, because my parents never wanted me to go to a school that had many Indians studying in it. They said, "What's the point of going all the way and meeting only Indians? You go to a school where there are very few Indians," and therefore they also picked Miami. And I have to say that I'm very glad that my introduction to United States of America was Oxford, Ohio. Because I learned a few things about America living in Miami University and in Oxford, Ohio, that I wouldn't have and couldn't have learned in a big city. I learned that family is important. I learned that community is what binds a different set of number of people together. I learned that education is the foremost important thing for children and students. I learned that making sure that everybody is included and everybody has equal access and opportunity to everything is the primary most obligation of societies. I learned what it meant to be free, and I learned what it meant to be in the United States of America. Somewhere along the line, I also decided to study abroad while studying abroad at Miami. I know this sounds a little odd. But you know, I was in Oxford, Ohio. So Richard Farmer School, as we all know it, Farmer School of Business, had this beautiful study abroad programs in London. And I decided to go for 2 of those, actually, 2 years in a row. And I had a great time, because I was with a bunch of American students in a place which was far more familiar to me than to them because of the British rule in India for many, many years. You know, you understand England and London much better. I had spent many years in London as a child. And here I was with a bunch of American students in UK. And I was waiting for one of my classmates to arrive from a flight in Chicago. His name is Patrick Wade. And right now he works in Munich. And he would have loved to be here this evening just to make fun of me, but thank God he isn't. PJ and I, as I used to call him, used to always hassle for departmental jobs at the decision science department. It was always a fight between him and me. Finally, the professor yielded and said, well, we'll just give to both of you. You decide how much each one of you want. Well, we were great friends, and we still are great friends, and he's one of my best friends that I can regard at any point in my time that I want to call. It's him that I pick up a phone and talk to. But that apart, PJ was getting on a flight to come to the same London program, and he was insistent that I go and pick him up at the airport in London. So I did turn up at the airport, and Heathrow in London, and he comes out, you know, with his hands out like that and said, what is going on? And I said, well, what happened? He said, well, I get on the flight in Chicago, and it's all Indians. Then I get on the flight, and it's all Indians. And I get down here at the airport, and it's all Indians. Did they bring me to India or to London? Are you sure this is not India? It was just a great way and a great expression of how his reaction was to a whole new culture, which he thought was just so familiar to him because he was my friend, but it was still a very different country, foreign to him and me both. And then that one statement underlines the essence of a study abroad program, that even though things are so familiar, they're just so very different. And in that bipolarity of things being similar as well as different, you really discover where you lie as a person and as a human being. And there is just no other way to discover that than being abroad. When you start asking yourself the questions about what is it that looks familiar to you, what does it look that different to you? And you know, believe me, there were not more than 2 people in that program who looked at the same thing in that summer program in London in the same way, even though we all came from the same place. What's most wonderful about Miami is that it is what you make it to be. It is really a school where you get to decide your own trajectory. And I wanted to graduate early. Now I don't know why, but at that point in time, I really wanted to graduate early. So I went to my student advisor at the farmer school, and I said, I got to get out of here in 3 years. She looked at me and she said, you're crazy. I said, no, I'd really like to get out of here in 3 years. And we planned a way on how I could get out of there in 3 years. And it really always amazes me how everybody who comes to Miami has found their own space, their own footing. It doesn't matter which country they came from. We had students who came from French exchange programs. I had a Japanese roommate my freshman year. I had a French roommate my sophomore year. I had an American roommate my 3rd year at Miami. I know there were people from countries as far as Senegal and South Korea and Australia, Brazil, Chile, Mexico in that dorm, and everybody was there following their own wishes and dreams. It really reminded me of this joke that I heard when I was leaving for Miami. And it came because, you know, in those days when there was no Hotmail and there was no Google and there was no robust internet. Everything came in mail. And right before I was supposed to leave, I got this big mail packet from Miami that had the big course book. And 1996, India was still a very controlled country. We only had 2 television channels. And looking at that big book, I looked up at my mom and said, "Oh my God, do I have to really study all of this? I'll never get out of there." I didn't know that it was all that you chose to do. So a friend's dad who had spent a considerable amount of time in the United States sort of told me a joke that I would really like to share with you. So here is this lady. She's in deep, beautiful sleep. She's dreaming, really. And she's fast asleep, and she's been dreaming for several hours. And suddenly in her dream, a man appears. And the man is walking very closely to her. He's almost going to get close to her neck. Suddenly she wakes up and she looks at the man in the dream and says, "Well, what are you going to do to me? What are you going to do to me?" The man looks at her and says, "Well, lady, it's your dream." So he said a U.S. education was like that. You see, it's your dream. Figure it out. And one of the first things that I had to figure out when I came to Miami was where to open a bank account. And I would say that was a moment of, point of no return as such. So we went uptown, and I had to go and look at this couple of banks. I came from a country where you didn't choose which bank you banked with, Every bank was a nationalized bank. Every bank offered the same interest rates. There were no choices to be made. And here were these 2 or 3 banks in small town Oxford. And I went from one bank to the other bank and uptown, and I suddenly went and sat below the now not standing water tower, and I started crying. I said, "Oh my God, how am I ever going to survive here? They even make choices in bank rates." And I think at that point in time, after crying for about half an hour, I just decided, well, here I am, and this is what it is, so I'm just going to learn this new way of life. And I can tell you, for as many Miami students who have gone through some of the wonderful study abroad programs that we offer to them, and even those who have come to India in the Global Rhythms program that I have had an opportunity to meet and interact with, this moment has come to pass in their life, where they come and sit in a foreign culture. Doesn't matter how insignificant or inane that circumstance appears to them in retrospect. But at that point in time, it is an overwhelming experience. And having gone through those doors of that overwhelming experience allows them to be ready for any and every challenge that life and world has to offer to them. And therefore, I think study abroad is a must-have. It's an opportunity that every child and every student must get. How we can make sure that this possibility is available to as many students at Miami is something that can be worked on. That I know that President Hodge and the wonderful team at Miami has been constantly and consistently working to make sure these opportunities are available to more and more Miami students than ever before. But here's what I would have to say. We live in a world today which is very, very deeply interconnected. Somebody says something in one country. Lady Gaga wears a dress somewhere, and 30 million people across the globe come to know in a second. That's the world that we live in. When I came to Miami, there was no Hotmail. 1997 saw the beginning of Hotmail. 1998 is the year Google was founded. Steve Jobs returns to Apple in 1998 and then releases iMac. How many of us carry iPhones today and iPads today? How many of us have a Hotmail account today and Gmail account today? How many of us have a social media account today? I mean, this world is a different world. Social revolutions, look at Egypt, happen on internet today. Therefore, it is better and it is prudent. And it is not just a luxury or a nice thing to have, but it is an absolute necessity that we prepare Miami students to face the world for what it is. A very complex, very dynamic, and highly interdependent community of very driven 7 billion people across the world. 2 billion children in this world every morning. 2 billion children across the world every morning get up and go to school. All of you who have sent kids to school or have grandkids who go to school know that every morning at 7:30, everybody's getting ready, brushing their hair, packing their bags, checking on their homeworks, getting to the school. Mothers are dropping kids to school, not just in this country, but so many countries around the world. How do we leave this world behind for these 2 billion children, out of which 16,000 die every day, 1 every 5 seconds, only because of hunger? Is going to depend on what kind of education and what kind of citizens we prepare students of our university and our community to be. Not that the whole world can be changed by one community, but believe me, if there has to be a change that happens in this world, it starts with a community. I see no reason why such a change and such an audacious change should not start at Miami. Thank you.